Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Liam's Hockey, brought to you by Hosie and Brown Automotive, and today, the garage of choice, B&N Transmission. And we'll have a little something on them at the end of the show here in just a few minutes' time. And of course, our fantastic shot of Jameson's brought to you by Ad Seal Services, and time to give them a pretty good shout out as well here, and we'll do that in a little later as well. Just catch up on all the hockey news from the last 7 days or so. Haven't been banging these out regularly, but I will pick up the pace again, I promise. But it's, trade deadline yesterday, I guess, would be the number one topic du jour, such as it was, setting all sorts of, not records, but definitely you have to go back to either 2003 for the fewest number of transactions, equaling that, or 2000 since the fewest number of players that were moved. And look at COVID times and the just cap certainty and the quarantine and all of these other things, plus possibly even owners not having as deep of pockets. Everything else that's going on, I think, conspired to keep the numbers down. That said, leading up to and including even the day of, there still were a number of deals to sink your teeth in. I think most notably here in Toronto, the moves that they made, and definitely the Boston Bruins, I think, picking up Taylor Hall. I mean, there was no bigger name that went. There was no other Hart Trophy winner that was bandied about yesterday during the trade deadline. So let's deal on those two for a second. The Toronto Maple Leafs here have addressed everything. It's funny, you look at the analogy with the Montreal Canadiens, and after their play in the bubble, going 2 rounds, beating an uninterested Pittsburgh team, losing to the Flyers in 6, giving Marc Bergevin seemingly, finally, the impetus to go out and try and shore up where he felt some of the shortcomings were in Montreal. And I would say he hit a pile of home runs there, and I maintain that from that, they would be comfortably a playoff team, and I predicted them to finish 3rd in the division. I also will maintain right now that had they not had to take the break for COVID and now have to make up the games played, that they would, in fact, I think, still finish 3rd. I don't think that'll be the case now. I think they'll roll into 4th and will undoubtedly play the Toronto Maple Leafs first round, and that will garner the attention of this country, that's for sure. You're going to have 2 Canadian teams also going at it in the North Division, as we all well know, and it should be Edmonton and Winnipeg, will be, and that will equally be an outstanding series. But Montreal did what they did in the short term, had to do in the short term, to elevate themselves, to increase the scoring, hopefully insulate Suzuki and KK as they hopefully become, for Montreal anyway, high-ranking centers, something they've been missing on forever in that department, and then continue to try and do some things like get Carey Price a capable backup. Most notably, that would be probably the biggest addition. If you look at what Toronto did now, over the course of not only just at the deadline picking up Foligno, that's a great pickup for them. It is. I was joking with my good buddy Dave Eastwood online yesterday. I don't think he watches these anyway, but I was taking the piss right out of him, right? Saying, oh yeah, man, those 7 goals that Foligno's bringing. Oh, well, that's not why they brought him in, for God's sake. Dubas is addressing what's been a massive shortcoming for the Leafs, really under his tenure, that's for sure. And they now have got grit between Simmons, between Foligno, between Bogosian, between Muzzin, even a little bit with the fossil Joe Thornton, if need be, and get down and rumble and roll in the mud with the best of them. I don't know how much ice time he's actually effectively going to get. But the little bit of irony there is it looks like they're heading to a first-round matchup with Montreal where they really don't need that grit against the Habs. The Habs are not an overtly physical team that are going to try and jam that down your throats. But those pickups, I mean, let's be honest. If the playoffs started today, tomorrow, what have you, the Leafs would be overwhelming favorites, not only in series against Montreal, but favorites to win the North. And then you get into the semis, and all bets are off. And that's really where a guy like a Foligno And who knows, maybe Ben Hutton, who they picked up, they could platoon him in. He can handle that going as well if need be. I mean, it's far be it for any team to win a Stanley Cup under any circumstances that you're not going to need more than 18 or 20 skaters on deck. We all know that. So anything can happen, and of course injuries are still a factor many, many times also. So I like the Leaf pickups. David Rittich, I think, is a great pickup. I'll tell you what, I know his record and his stats don't necessarily bear that out, but you keep in mind on how terrible a team he's been on all year, and let's be honest, I don't know how many people really want to step up and say it, but Calgary's been terrible, and he's got a few wins on that team, and he's brought in as an insurance policy anyway. Even in Jack Campbell taking his first loss as a Leaf last night to the Habs, he made a couple of huge saves. He made a save off Suzuki in the third, not the Anderson one, because Anderson totally fanned on that shot and hit the post. He should have scored it. Campbell had nothing to do with that. But the save on Suzuki and a couple of others, and he never really quit on anything last night, and the Habs caught Toronto still enjoying, I think, the fact that they went to Montreal early so they could all be tucked into their hotel rooms and watch the Masters, which was, according to Sheldon Keefe, was one of the reasons why they went up to Montreal early. They caught him a little dozy there last night, and yeah, look it. The Habs can still give any team hell in a cell, but they caught Toronto a little dozy last night, benefited from it by getting the win, and Campbell ends up taking the loss. But Rittich comes in. You got Hutchison, you got Freddie, who's due back, and it's undoubtedly he's going to see some action in the playoffs. Like, I really find it hard to believe, as well as Campbell has played here, that all of a sudden this is a revelation for this guy at 29 years of age, and he's turning into Terry Sawchuk or Patrick Waugh or Ron Hextall or Dryden or whoever. You know, I mean, maybe Connor Brown is becoming one of those guys in terms of a skater and a scorer with what he's doing, but no, there's no way that Rittich is being brought in as anything else other than insulation. And as I said to somebody the other day, the fact that the Leafs are in the position they are because they've played so well in the last 10 games, they can afford to fool around a little bit and start Rittich against Calgary, his former team, in this next game, which is tonight, I believe, isn't it? I think it's tonight. So there you have it. And I think that's great stuff. I think that's all great stuff. And I think with Toronto, I like the moves. I like the moves. And Kyle Dubas is, all excuses are off the table. They've got more than enough offense. You've got one of the most gifted guys on skates in Matthews. His partner in crime is one of the greatest setup guys in Mitch Marner. And now with the emergence of Hyman, and to a lesser extent Kerfoot, you throw in a couple other of those secondary pieces. Then you're mixing in Foligno. You've got Simmons, who's actually getting second unit power play time. And boy, if they get any goaltending at all, still maybe on D, look, Brody's been an absolute godsend. You know what you're getting with Muzzin. Riley is more than likely, all but assuredly, Team Canada bound if they go to the Olympics in 2022. They're looking decent, really decent to really good. They really are. Where the breakdowns are going to occur, if in fact they get to the semis, are going to be, can the secondary scoring contribute if Matthews is shut down and checked effectively? And what about the defense? Can they hold up against a quality opponent in the semifinal? I mean, this is uncharted waters for the Leafs for a long, long, long time. So they have brought players in, though, where it's not uncharted. And that's where I think you have to give it up to the calculator. I think Dubas has done a hell of a job here. I think he has anyway. And now they got to go out and get it done. And look at, I'm a hardcore Hab fan, and they're probably heading to a first round matchup here. And conversely, I mean, Montreal's just hoping if Carey Price can somehow find it. And I'll tell you what, if he does, great. They're going to be a real tough out. It could go 6 games, could go 7. If he's not, because Jake Allen can't carry the mail there. So it's really got to be Carey. And if need be, like it was a number of times in the past, not very often, but a couple, Patrick Waugh. Like, what people don't realize, for example, in 1987, the Montreal Canadiens went to the semifinals. They lost to the Flyers. That was a pregame brawl in Game 6. They got beat out that game. And what people fail to remember is that Brian Hayward was really the starter for Montreal in the playoffs in 87. Patrick Waugh was really his backup. I mean, they went more with Hayward than they did with Patrick Waugh. Patrick Waugh won the Stanley Cup the year before. And we all know what he did in Sherbrooke, and we know what he did with Montreal in 86. But you got to 87. It took Patrick just a couple more turns there around the sun to really get his footing. And also, too, was a little bit of a matchup there. You know, I think it was maybe a bit of a better matchup. Maybe now, as I look back 34 years later, you wonder, you can second guess all sorts of things if you go back in sports or hockey. So, but I think the Habs could still be a tough out if Carey Price plays like he can. The other side of it, conversely, is the scorers. Like Josh Anderson, for whatever reason, he loves playing the Leafs. He's going to have to want to continue to do that because they need your Toffoli's and your Andersons and your Tatars to step up. Gallagher will be back, obviously. I mean, your key guys are going to have to score because you're not going to match them on the scoreboard with the offense that Toronto has. So you've got to score on your chances. Hope that Carey outplays whoever is in net in Toronto and that the defense is largely a wash. And even at that, the Habs will need some good fortune. Shea Weber's lost a full step. Edmondson is an outstanding defensive dynamo. You put that puck on his stick and you may as well have pulled the pin out of the grenade. I mean, oh my God. That is one scary thing. I have never seen a guy. I mean, he's leading the NHL in plus minus. He's got a Stanley Cup ring. He is a beast back there. Like, he's not Romanov physically, but he loves to hit. I'll tell you what, he cannot handle that puck to save his life, man. It is scary. But, and Petry's cooled off, obviously. I mean, that was unrealistic for him to keep going at the pace that he was, but he still presents, obviously, a Y factor there. And I guess if there is the greatest unknown for the Habs would be Cole Caulfield. If he comes up, and can he channel his inner John Druce or Chris Kontos, or from a Montreal perspective, Claude Lemieux in 1986? Could he be that guy? And that's why they present, and not only that, but just all the historical implications too. It would not be a normal matchup. We'll have lots of time to talk about that if, in fact, it comes to pass. To Boston picking up Taylor Hall. In discussions, of course, with two hardcore Bruin fans in the last 24 hours. My dear roommate, Peter Oliver, and my longtime buddy, Dave Bullis. Two guys who bleed black and gold. And they both made great points. The same thing, ironically. I could have gone across the street and talked to Carl Downey, but by the time he smoked half that carton and every second word an F-bomb, you're just not going to get the same thing at the same time. And we'd end up talking about something else anyway. But he, too, is a hardcore Bruin fan. And I know he, too, would feel as they do, Holly and Bull, that this is the best team that Taylor Hall has ever played on. And could that be a small resurgence possibly for him? If you watch the video of him after the trade, boy, I'll tell you, unless you're the most heartless, cruel person alive, you have to feel for the guy a little bit. He looked like someone has shot his dog. I mean, he's clearly down on himself. 2 goals. The Sabres gamble, and he gambles on this $8 million deal, and now here he is. So he comes to Boston in a deal that doesn't even get the Sabres a first-round pick, and not only that, they picked up half of the remaining money. Hey, Kevin Adams, come on down. You wonder about Tom Fitzgerald in New Jersey and Kevin Adams in Buffalo, and some of these guys maybe got taken by some experienced GMs here. But having said that, Buffalo, that's a whole other story. But in Boston picking up Taylor Hall, I like the move. Automatically, right now, he is the 6th highest paid player on the team. Like, immediately, you're taking pressure off the guy's back. He's going to be on the second line, not the first. Nothing is supplanting anybody that's on that first line in Boston. That when they're all together, with the exception of maybe the number one line in the NHL, which is in Colorado, with the exception of them, they're in the mix for the second or third best line in the NHL. Well, McDavid and Draisaitl don't play together all the time. They're more like Gretzky, Curry, and whoever's on the wing. I know it's at times it's been Cassian, at times it's been Nugent Hopkins, at times they've mixed in Puljujarvi. They've done some different things, so I wouldn't include them. And in Tavares and Marner, they've done some mixing and matching there. So in terms of three being kept together, Taylor Hall's not coming on that line if everybody's healthy. So now you're taking a guy who won the Hart Trophy 3 years ago, who a couple seasons ago, wait a minute, was this last year, right? In the bubble with Arizona. I mean, the guy, it was only 6 points in 9 games, but it's 6 points in 9 games. Like, he's only got 14 playoff games to his credit. He's picked up 12 points. And there's not really much of a body of work to go there because they've been so intermittent, the 2 playoff experiences. But now you're going to a team that ironically very similar to Montreal. They're kind of sort of backing their way in here. I mean, the Bruins have a 3-point cushion and a couple games in hand on the surging Rangers, and now getting Taylor Hall in the lineup. Thing is, the Bruins got 6 games left against the Sabres. Isn't that ironic? Said Alanis and Liam McGuire on Liam's Hockey. I mean, the thing is that you're throwing them right in there, just like the Leafs are going to do with Rittich against Calgary, and just like Ottawa's going to do with Mete against Montreal on Saturday. And look, this has gone on in the annals of hockey history, going back right through time. But it's I think there's a unique opportunity for Taylor Hall. Boy, you're going to be playing against a team where you absolutely crap the bed. Now you have a chance to maybe rectify something here. Show them, you got something to prove there, don't you? Only scored 2 goals, for God's sake. He's embarrassed. You can clearly see that. And you want to make a good impression on your new team. Plus, he's got no contract for next year. And now he's saying, and don't forget, one more really important point here. He had a full no move. So he had to waive that. He had to waive anything to where he was going. He wanted to go to Boston. And he even said in the interview as well that in the Taylor and Tyler draft of 2010 that he was in Boston. And he loved the city even then as a junior, getting ready to be drafted in the NHL. All but assuredly going number 1, which he did, as we know, to Edmonton. And Tyler Seguin going to Boston. But he said he loved the city even then. Now maybe that's a little bit of lip service, but at the same time, I'll take him in face value for that because he had to waive everything to agree to this deal. And other teams were allegedly, if you read the guys who call the shots on that, the best insiders in the game online, they'll tell you that the Islanders and a couple of other teams were very, 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 very hot on the trail. And in fact, who knows? There may have been a better deal on the table for Kevin Adams and the Sabres. But he couldn't get Taylor to agree to it. So he got what he could out of Boston. It reminds me of when Ottawa traded Danny Heatley. And the late Brian Murray had the deal with the Edmonton Oilers done. And it sounded and looked pretty good on paper, but instead had to make the one with San Jose. Because Heatley wouldn't approve the one to Edmonton, didn't want to go to Edmonton. Sometimes you're screwed with those no movement and no trades. And yet seemingly you can't seem to get a deal today without how, in a lot of cases, sign a contract without giving the player those no moves or certainly no trades at the very least. So this is very interesting. I like it. I like the deal for Boston. They are so banged up right now, coming off their worst loss of the season, much like the Minnesota Wild a couple nights before that, coming off I think a 9-1 or 9-2 game themselves. Gonna happen, man. And look, Minnesota's going to the dance too. So it's going to happen. I said it a couple of shows ago. I'm giving a lot of teams and a lot of players in particular. Look at a guy like Jake DeBrusk. Go back to the Bruins here. This whole Bruin team are still trying to make up for their time off from COVID. And look how they've looked in a lot of these games. And look at the other teams. Forget even about Vancouver, who are just incrementally here getting their roster back together. They're scheduled to play Friday or Saturday, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And then they're saying the NHL is saying they're going to get these games in. So we know this. We already know the season's extended to May 11th. You got to figure it's going 12, 13, 14, maybe 15. Anyway, is it not? To get these Canuck games in? I don't know. Anyway, like the deal for the Bruins. Well, obviously, love the deal the Islanders made the day before. Sajak and Palmieri. Great experience there. Love it. Love what Toronto did. And really everybody else. Is there any... is there any Butch Goring, Ronnie Francis deals here? I don't think there's anything we're going to reflect back historically that we'll say really looked like that. But it's amazing how many little deals over really since the trade deadline came into being 40 some years ago that have made an impact on a Stanley Cup winning team. So we'll see how it all plays out. But that was yesterday's news. So there you have it. I talked about young defensemen last show, and I totally forgot about Mr. Fox in New York. I know he's been around for a couple of years, and he's already on his third team. Can you imagine the Calgary Flames moving him, and then the Carolina Hurricanes would probably like a do-over on that one to get him back. But Carolina are going to be a hell of a tough out. That entire Central Division, that race for first is going to be insane between Tampa Bay, Florida, and Carolina. It's going to be absolutely crazy right down to the wire. And it's, again, using the term, isn't it ironic here, but you look at the Montreal Canadiens last year, couldn't get a win against Detroit to save their lives. And you look at how Detroit are giving Carolina fits and Tampa Bay fits. And isn't it ironic? They turn around and they can't beat almost anybody else. But some of these teams, and you look at the Ottawa Senators as well, they've got 14 wins and 2 of them are in a shootout. They've got 12 wins, I think, in regulation. 12 in 43 or 44 games. It's brutal. It's horrendous. Yet they're in most games, and they've beat everybody. Well, other than Edmonton. Well, I guess they haven't beat Vancouver either. They got those wins against Montreal and Toronto. And Calgary, obviously. But... and Winnipeg, who they beat last night. So, how about that? Hellebuck looks like the Vezina Trophy winner against the Montreal Canadiens, and then he goes in against Ottawa, and he's handling the puck like it's a grenade. Reminds me of 2017 when Lundqvist and the Rangers beat the Habs out in the first round, and then they end up playing the Senators, and he couldn't stop squat. In fact, that was really probably the last time he did anything of any note in the net. Henry Lundqvist, I'm talking about, who's a Hall of Famer, will be a Hall of Famer, and was the first round of 2017. But I love what we're seeing. Just to digress for a second, the video comments that have emerged that he's posted, the commentary, the video, and whatnot, everything looks so positive, health-wise for him, and the fact he's even putting the pads back on at all, I think is absolutely remarkable. So good on that. Just one last comment about the standings. Things of that nature. How tough it is to make up points. You look what the Leafs have done in the North. They've skated away, pun intended here, from everybody. Why? Because they've gone 8-1-1 in their last 10 games. So they've picked up 17 points in their last 10 games. So I think the Winnipeg Jets have gone, I think, 6-3-1 or something like that. I believe it's 6-3-1. So in their last 10 games, they've picked up 13 points with an outstanding record, 6-3-1. Yet they've lost 4 points to the Toronto Maple Leafs. So you can see, you look at Colorado are doing the same thing in their division. They are the other team that are 8-1-1 in the last 10. And again, Vegas, another team that I think has identical to Winnipeg or close to it. They've lost ground in the last 10 games. But you go down to the third place, fourth place, fifth place in the American divisions in particular, where the dogfights are still occurring. Looks like there's going to be some great playoff races potentially in some of those divisions. And it's always like checking to see the last 10 games. And it gives you an idea just how difficult it is to pick up points. Where you go, 5-4-1, and you got 11 points, and the team you're chasing has gone 5-5. So you've picked up 1 point in 10 games. If you check out the divisions, you'll see those types of things are there. Other than Calgary falling off, going 2-8, Vancouver decimated with COVID, right out of hockey, and of course Ottawa just too far back to do anything. This is just the North. But Calgary, who could have, and still, it's unlikely. Obviously, they're gonna get it done now. But you look at the last 10, they've gone 2-8, so you only got 4 points. Montreal's 5-4-1. They've picked up 11. There's 7 points difference with the games in hand because their time off for COVID. And there you see the discrepancy and the difficulty that you have in making up ground. Yet you see the differences at the top. If you've run away, basically, which is what Toronto and Colorado, to a lesser extent, are doing in their respective divisions, it's still pretty tough sledding. It's still pretty tough sledding there because, these games in hand that teams end up having, the only two teams that are out of 31 that are sitting at 8-1-1 right now are two of the best in the league in Toronto and Colorado. When I say two of the best, I mean I put the Leafs in the top 6 or 7 overall, but tops in their division. And everybody else is like they're a 500 club, or you're a couple games over. Nobody's reeling off 3 or 4 wins in a row. One or two teams do it. The majority do not. So it's very, very difficult, man, to make up points. St. Louis taking a run at it. But what's going on there? Well, they're winning and Arizona's losing. So St. Louis won 3 in a row. Arizona's lost 4 in a row. So, now Bennington are going, hey, we're coming. Well, you're not out of the woods, and you're in a hell of a division. You're going to have a hell of a first-round matchup. I don't think you're the team you were there, brother. But you know what? With the pedigree that's there, don't want to count them out. All right. Yeah, I was going to say a little bit more about Cole Caulfield, but I don't think there's no doubt in my mind we're going to see him before the end of the regular season here. I think that he's going to play. I would assume another couple of games in Laval minimally. You'd like to think they're going to give him about a 5-game trial. And so far, so good, right? 9 shots on net, 3 goals and assists, plus player. I don't know what type of ice time he's getting, but I'm assuming he's north of 15 minutes, I would assume. But well under 20. But I don't know that. I didn't check that up. But so far, so good. And, a tough one on the Hobey Baker. You had two really, really qualified guys there. Nothing away from Dryden McKay, I believe his name is, a goaltender, had an outstanding season as well. Ironically named after Ken Dryden. But Cole Caulfield's numbers are just no way. You're just too good, too big to ignore. I know it looks like Pinto maybe plays at least what we've seen. Limited action we've been able to view on NCAA hockey, and sadly both of them losing in their respective first rounds en route to the Frozen Four. North Dakota in spectacular fashion in a 5 overtime game, and Wisconsin in a game where Cole Caulfield almost single-handedly willed that team to victory with a couple goals in the third period and just refused to lose. He was the heart and soul of that team. So right team, right guy won the Hobey. And Pinto, I think we're going to see potentially next game. Anxious to see him play, And with any luck and God willing for both of them good health, they'll be facing off against each other on opposite sides here in a good rivalry, which Ottawa and Montreal have been for certainly since the two playoff series, 2013 and 2015, and hopefully beyond. I mean, Ottawa will get back at some point in time if Eugene Melnyk can stay out of the way. That's the bottom line. If he stays out of the way, anything's possible because the team is going to, just by osmosis, are going to improve. So, but that's a big one. He's Harold Ballard 2.0, and until Harold owned the team until he passed away. And then when it was sold to the Toronto Teachers Pension Fund, they immediately hired Cliff Fletcher, and Cliff Fletcher made the Doug Gilmour trade. And within 3 years, they had back-to-back trips to the semifinals. So, it can happen really, really quickly. But conversely, everything started on the downward slide for the Ottawa Senators when Mr. Melnyk ordered Brian Murray to screw around with Alfie. That's where it all started. You want to look at the origin of the troubles of the Ottawa Senators, the mass exodus of stars, whether they hit home runs on the deals or the guys crap the bed after, or whether they've gone on to become Mark Stone, or why a Pajot had to leave, or why a Borowiecki. That's a head scratcher, is it not? I mean, really? So, I really think until there's a new owner in place, this team is destined to ultimately fail. But they will, by osmosis, I think, just sheer attrition of bad players, inclusion of good players, they will improve. There's no question about that. And Brady Tkachuk is he'll be wearing the C next year. Now his contract's up, and his brother's got one more year left at $7 as well, $7 million. Brady should make more than that. Brady should be at 8 times 8 all day, if not 8.5. He's going to get a big number. 8 anyway. I think he's getting more than 7. Don't you, Sens fans? I think he's getting more than 7. Wouldn't it be something somehow? Maybe they could end up playing together somewhere. Who knows? Could be Ottawa. Could be Calgary. Could be, maybe they'll go somewhere else where their dad played. He played in a couple different teams. Who knows? Who knows? Anyway, this is a long one. Got to shut her down. Toast here, of course, before we get on to B&N Transmission. Toast brought to you by AdSeal Services. My good dear friend Mark Cullen, who's the president of this fantastic company. They are the waterproofing membrane system giant of the world. Definitely of Eastern Ontario. I'm calling it the world. Any waterproofing that's needed on any commercial structure of any type, they're your go-to. And yeah, this isn't really necessarily probably a forum where Mark and his business associates would have ever sought out necessarily for advertising. But, I get a few eyeballs, and you never know. So I want to thank them anyway for the sponsorship, specifically because it's for this shot of whiskey. I'm not going to do just yet. And I wanted to give AdSeal a shout out for that. So thank them very much for their continued support for a few more shows here. And B&N Transmission. So here we go, Hosie and Brown, the garage of choice today. And for the first time, folks, we have got a garage that is absolutely 100% specific. This is not general repair, oil changes, front end, back end, tires. This is transmissions, differentials, and clutches. And this is B&N Transmission. Now, they've been a family-owned and operated business, like most of the other garages have been. And they've been in operation since 1977. Now, again, probably a name that some of you are familiar with. It could be from their original location, which was on Cumberland. But since 1980, they've been at 1086 Gladstone. That's right in the heart of the city. Right downtown Gladstone. Great little street. Runs east-west. I'm sure you know it well. They're at 1086. They've been there, as I said, since 1980. And they started on Cumberland with a couple of bays. Little small operation. They now have 2 floors, 5 bays, still family owned, and they're rocking it in terms of the tranny world. They are your destination of choice, believe me, if you've got any transmission differentials or clutch issues specifically. And they've got a couple of taglines. Ottawa's most reputable transmission specialists. Love that one. And their dedication to honesty. But you know something that I did not know, and I want to give Hosie and Brown credit for giving me the heads up on this. I know of it as soon as I heard it, and you will too. But before the cell phone days, before the smartphones and the phones and the ability to get help immediately if you got stuck, especially on the highway, especially on our main thoroughfare, which is the Queensway, they had the Queensway Patrol. Brian, he was the angel of the Queensway for over 20 years. Who remembers that? I do. That was B&N Transmission who supplied that man, that truck, that vehicle, that operation with the wherewithal to go up and down and help countless hundreds of motorists for over 20 years, thanks to B&N Transmission. So, family owned and operated, tranny specialists, differentials and clutches, 1086 Gladstone. They're a garage of the day, courtesy of Hosie and Brown Automotive. Fantastic. Thanks to them, thanks to Hosie, thanks to Rod. Our shot here, as mentioned earlier, brought by AdSeal Services. And I gave him a toast earlier. He has since passed away. I wrote about it. So if you follow me on social media, you probably saw it. But Greg Holmes died a short while ago. And he's going to be big time missed. First and foremost by his family. And I mean that his immediate family, Kathy and his children, his wife and his children, but the Holmes family and all of the in-laws, nieces, nephews. They're Osgood's royal family, really. I mean, you got the Holmeses, you got the Petersons, and you know you've got the backbone of this community. These small rural communities they've been built largely on the backs of families that have been here for generations. And whether it be Manotick, Cars, or Osgood, the three communities that have basically been my home for over 50 years, in the case of the village of Osgood and the Osgood Ward and formerly the Osgood Township, and the Holmes family on the passing of Greg, I toast him today. Everybody enjoy the hostilities on the ice. I'll be back in a few days with another Liam's Hockey. And thanks to the sponsors, everybody stay safe. G'day.